morning, YouTube. Somehow 9 o'clock is an early morning for me. It's a brisk 40 out. I dropped down to lower 30s last night, so I had most of my beds covered. I'm gonna uncover everything except for the cucumbers today. Maybe when it gets above 55, I'll uncover the cucumbers. I might have gone a little heavy on the mulch here. So I just sowed carrot seeds on this part of the bed. Just gonna move a little bit of the mulch over. Make sure that heat, that sun, helps encourage those carrot seeds to germinate. So I've been holding off on weeding this bed because I've never put a bunch of garlic in it, and we have very mild winters here, so I figured sometimes I saw the garlic can sprout even in the winter, and so I was unsure of what was coming up, what was garlic and what wasn't, but now it's pretty sure the garlic has started to come up these nice thick shoots. And that makes it very clear what is not garlic and what is in fact grass seeds and other things like, I guess, dandelions or something. I use, that one got established. I use redwood pine needles for my front yard because we have a huge redwood tree in the front yard. It's constantly putting down needles all over the place. So I use it for a mulch because it's cheap and it's there and it's easy. But because it lands in the yard and I pick it up from the yard, it also has a bunch of grass seeds in it, I guess. So it looks like I'm gonna have to do a little more weeding. Oh, you live and you learn, and it's free. It doesn't take much, just to actually do it. Over here next to the south side of the shed, I had tried to do another garden bed. This is what I originally had my beans in, and it didn't work because I'd been counting on the sun hitting this spot, which it did all summer. But then when we got into fall and the winter, it got shaded. Like, this is, like, look at it right now. This is like the most sun it would have gotten, which is not enough for what I planted in it. Back behind the shed, I've got some more materials and stuff. This is where I'm going to put all of those cinder blocks once I finally get off my butt and start doing it. Stacking up cinder blocks. We've got steps to get onto the roof of the shed. We also have, I found this in somebody's front yard. They said it was free, and so I'm going to use it to make a bunch of trellises because I want to grow tomatoes next year in the spring. Next year, it's still December, next year. And behind the shed, we have lovely roses growing back here. This is a primrose. It makes lovely pink and red roses. Over here we have another red rose, and over there we've got a white rose, and over there I believe that's a red rose. I'm pretty sure it is. And then in the front yard we have even more roses. I live in Rohnert Park, which is between Santa Rosa and Petaluma. So it's, this area is known for its native roses and how easy it is to grow roses here. For example, these rose bushes were here when we moved in more than 8 years ago. And it wasn't until like a year ago I actually started caring about like tying them up and deadheading them. But they always bloom. They bloom throughout the year. We don't do anything to them. We don't water them. I've barely trimmed them. We're very lucky that we live in natural rose territory. Speaking of other naturally occurring plants I have here, this blackberry bush. This blackberry bush started out very small, very, very small. It was back along there. You used to be able to walk along this path, but then somebody came in this way and tried to break into our house. So my family was like, let the blackberry bush grow. It's a great security measure. Like, these are native Californian blackberries. They have hella thorns on them. They're I've been gotten real good by these suckers before, and we were just like cutting them back here, but I decided that I wanted blackberries because I love blackberries. And as we were chopping and chopping and chopping them back, they weren't making berries, so I decided instead, let's tie it up to this old frame. Now I kind of, any shoots that try and spread out into the rest of the yard, I can just tie back in. And I've been weaving them in and of each other. I initially tied it on with twine, just regular old garden twine that'll eventually break down, but now I've got them wrapped around it so much and woven into each other so much that I'm hopefully, even when the twine does eventually break down, they will still stay attached to the trellis. In addition to the blackberry there at the side of the house, there's also a blackberry that was coming up here underneath the window. That's our kitchen window right there. So I mean, they're native here in California. The birds drop their seeds everywhere, that sort of thing. They grow really well here. I've done very little to this thing aside from tying it, trying to lead it out so I can make a good long, that's like a 6-foot long bush, and then train it up a bit as I put a better trellis in here. This is just old painted bamboo that I got for like $2 at the hardware store. But yeah, no, I'm training it up. I'm training it so that they drop down there, they put roots in down here, and so I can make a bigger trellis so we could have a nice blackberry bush here that's really convenient to pick berries from. And like I said, the bushes are native. There's one over on that side of the house, there's one springing up there, and there's one springing up here next to the back door, another back door of the house. This one has not been doing so great. I mean, it's a tiny bush. The trellis I made for it fell over, but they're blackberries. In California, these things are impossible to kill. So I'm not worried about that. But then, like, I'll tell you, like, they come up everywhere. They're a weed, and you cannot kill them. You can only hold them back. So I'm working on that. I'm working on training them where I want them, and then weaving them back into each other or trimming them so that they don't take over the entire yard, but we still get delicious blackberries. I live in Northern California. It's December now, but all from October, that's sort of our new fire season, I guess. It's been hard to get outside and garden because the air quality has been so bad. It's been really depressing a lot of times to come outside and it's just the smoke in the air. That in California is still, I don't know if we're officially still, but we're still in a drought. It's rained a little bit in December and it was a little bit in November, but on the most part we don't get much rain. We get coastal fog if we're lucky. And that's what all the redwoods are surviving off of. Kind of the natural habitat here. We don't get a whole lot of rain, and well, that's okay. I mean, I personally like coming out in the morning, grabbing my watering can and coming out and watering garden beds that need it by hand. It's helped me get out of bed in the morning and get to see the sun come up in the morning. I am very much a night owl, and it'll get to extremes if I don't have something that'll get me up in the morning. I think it's been very good for me to come out in my garden in the morning. It's not a very big garden. It doesn't take very long to water or to take the covers off if I need to take the covers off, but it's made me happy to have something to get up and to do regularly. I love my garden. It means a lot to me, even if it hasn't been the best at producing in years past. But I think that was on me. I started most of this in July, which was enough for some plants to really get going. Like my green onions, I'm convinced they're zombies or something. You can't kill them. They'll just keep coming back and coming back and coming back. But the tomato plant that I had it was one of those little Target, here's some seeds, put in a little cup, it's for the kids, they put outside, they watch plants grow. So I didn't know what variety it was. It was a cherry tomato, and as it turned out, it was an indeterminate cherry tomato, and I didn't know that, and so it put all of its energy towards making a lot of little suckers and not a whole lot of tomatoes, which is fine. I harvested most of those suckers. I have them growing inside as new tomato plants to plant next year, and now I know how to prune them for them to actually produce a lot of fruit. So I'm very much looking forward to that. This is the plum tree. I was talking about all the plum wood I'm going to break down. Plum tree was getting sick, had a bunch of mushrooms and mold and stuff growing on it. So we're getting rid of the entire top layer so that the trunk can get healthy again, the light can get in there again, and it can knock out all the mold and the mushrooms, and the birds can fly through again and pick off all the bugs, that sort of thing. Right next to it is my compost bin. It's an old garden bench. The lid lifts up, and it's a very lazy compost bin. I started putting stuff in it without really knowing what goes into a compost bin, and then I looked up a few things, and I'm putting the right things in it, but I didn't really get rid of the other things. I mean, like, they'll break down, they'll make nutrients or worms or mold or whatever in there. But it's a very lazy compost bin. I don't turn it. I barely mash up the stuff before I chuck it in it. The flies seem to love it, and there's lots of spiders around it to catch the flies. Little lady swallowed a fly. Anyway, yeah, it's a work in progress. It's not one of my more well tended to experiments. Breaking down a plum tree by hand. Let's do it. I think that's about it for this morning. Got some bigger pieces there. Still have a good chunk to do, but I've gotten a good more on the pile than in that too. See you next time, YouTube. This is what I get for kneeling in the blackberries. Oh.